My name is Regina Portillo. I'm your facilitator for the day. This meeting is hosted by the Tax Increment Financial District of Laredo's downtown, known as TIRZ number 1. The TIRZ board has prepared a presentation for you, and then after we go through that, we want to open it up into a discussion with everyone and open for questions as well. Feel free to stand up and grab some food, grab refreshments throughout the meeting. There's plenty of food there for everyone. But I want to start off with some quick introductions. Some of you might know each other, some of you might not. So I want to ask you 3 things, and I know some of you have been here in the prior session. You still have to answer everything. So I want to know your name, your connection to downtown Laredo, and the city that you've enjoyed visiting the most. So I'll start off. My name is Regina Portillo. I don't own property in the downtown, but my husband and I both work in the downtown, and we want the downtown to really fulfill its potential and be that thriving place for us in the future. The favorites,
Could I ask another clarification?
Yes.
You said you worked at it. Could you specify what business or?
Well, my husband is a firefighter paramedic within the downtown. I'm more of an independent consultant. I work with Able City. I work with Councilwoman Cigarroa, so I have close ties coming in and out of downtown. My favorite city that I've ever visited is Cadaqués, Spain. It's a small beach town. It's very urban, very close together, so you can really essentially walk everywhere. So that's my favorite city. But sir, we can start off with you. Name, connection to downtown, and your favorite
Sure,
city.
my name is Jose Castillo. I'm working in the downtown area for the city of Laredo, and the place that I like to visit is San Antonio.
And why do you like San Antonio?
I guess the different things that they offer, especially in the downtown, a river walk, a river center.
Thank you so much. Bishop, go ahead.
Bishop James Tamayo. I'm your neighbor, La Posada, San Agustin Cathedral, and very interested also through St. Peter's in the St. Peter's Historic District Church. My favorite place, I think, I studied in seminary in Houston, was an auxiliary bishop in Houston. What I enjoyed about being in Houston was every weekend there was some activity to do. A lot of times it was a market that one could visit, family-oriented, an activity for young adults or other things like that. But there was a cultural perspective that drew my attention.
Thank you so much. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Edgar Campos. I work with the City of Laredo under community development. And like mentioned earlier, I like San Antonio because of the historic and the walkability and just the downtown area that it has to showcase.
Thank you so much. Tina Martinez.
Tina Martinez, Community Development Director. I work in the downtown. I have a lot of ties to the downtown. My parents used to own property downtown, and they used to actually have stores. So I remember the good old days of the stores being, vibrant, and I mean, I would always love to see that again. Favorite city? I'm just gonna say Las Vegas because every time I go, there's something new to do. I mean, there's just and it's always redeveloping itself. Like it's never the same. Like I mean, I can remember the first time I went there 20 years ago. It's very different from what it is right now. I mean, everything, what they offer, even a lot of people still think it's just for the adult. There's a lot more family oriented. So they've reinvented themselves. They reinvent themselves every 3 months, 6 months it seems. But that's what I see. But I mean, there's a lot of other nice cities. It's just I won't stand alone.
Thank you, Tina.
Hi, I'm Priscilla Iglesias, the Executive Director for Laredo Main Street. So for obvious reasons, my job has me here downtown. But more personal to me to that is I'm not a Laredoan. I didn't grow up when downtown was this vibrant, really cool place here. But I did get to experience that in my hometown, which is the city that I love the most, is El Paso. It started off similar to what we see in our downtown right now, vacant and some challenges. But through work and development, they were able to transform their downtown, and now it's like a really, really beautiful place to visit. It's a big town, but with a small town feeling. And my connection here is that my kids live here, and their family is deeply rooted here. And I would hope to be able to do something for their future.
My name is Orlando Navarro. I'm the City Planning Director. Also on the TIRZ board. My connection is working downtown. When I grew up here, I did experience the downtown Laredo, the Plaza Theater and shops and what have you. So I've done that. And the city that reminds me of something that I think we can do is Georgetown, Texas, which is just north of Austin. It's a smaller town, but it really has a nice feel to it. There's a lot of walking there at the university that's there. I think it's really nice. So, and my task is to work on the downtown area, so we just continue to do that. It's a great start.
So, some of you have already heard this was here. I've worked downtown, I volunteered downtown with Bethany. I didn't say this in the morning, but probably that's my longer history since the building. Since '98, I was volunteering with Bethany House for shelter, second expansion, that kind of work. I'm on the TIRZ board. I don't think everybody here knows, but my favorite town, I mentioned it the same, I'm not going to change it, is DC. For the mix of walkability and it's very green. Any time of the year that you go, there's something, environmentally that's different and that's peaking. So I love that. In terms of, I think those are the questions, but in terms of what's happening downtown, I think to use Henry's phrase, there's going to be a tipping point, and I hope that we can get there soon because there's a lot of energy. I think we just have to align it, and I know these sessions hopefully will help us get us aligned, and to that tipping point where we can see it return, not in the same way. I think it's not going to be the same, but I think there can be a sense of vibrancy that's different, but vibrancy altogether in the end.
Brenda?
Hi everyone, my name is Brenda, and I'm from the sister city, born in Laredo and raised in Laredo as well. I guess my connection to downtown, I work downtown in Laredo City and also in several other organizations like nonprofits. We're trying to have small projects to make it better, make it more walkable, more safe for pedestrians. And it's my favorite city, like Bishop, Houston, because I'm currently going to school over there, and like you said, there's a lot of things going on over there, and they focus on just keeping again pedestrians safe in some parts. I know it's a city that like everywhere folks a lot on the car, but they have certain areas where people can go and walk around safe.
My name is Vienna Frank. I'm a principal and one of the founders of Laredo City and City Bakery, which is a 501c3 that helps advocates for better quality of life in a place, develop civic solutions for what they would like to see, and we're architects, planners, and economic development. We have our offices downtown. My family, I'm first generation American. My family, my parents started a store in Laredo. And I failed to mention that up until, 10 years ago, we couldn't go to Laredo anymore. That was one of my favorite places to go. That was a really great incentive. And I think one day it'll come back because it's got good bones, just like downtown. And I love every city. I believe cities are, the city, you have access to a happy life. Every city is beautiful in some way or another, especially their inner city and downtown.
Arturo, thank you for coming. Yeah, those two things. Name, connection to the downtown, and your city that you've enjoyed visiting.
Arturo Garcia. Ex, city personnel there, but downtown owner, property owner. Great to be here. Want to hear what's going on still want to stay involved. And it's a city that I really loved. I think, it's always, Vegas there was kind of nice. There's a lot of lights. So that's another cool.
So for Vegas and Hampton Park.
We need to disconnect sometimes.
Yeah, did you guys talk to each other?
I'm Carol Alexander, and I am a local real estate appraiser, and I am a stakeholder downtown. I'm also on the TIRZ board. What was it? City. Those are my connections. I've been working downtown for about 10 years. My favorite city, well, maybe not my favorite city, but a city that right now my favorite city is Laredo. Because I see such an opportunity for our downtown to turn it into one of the other cities that I enjoy visiting, like Boston, because of the walkability and the history, DC, the walkability, the history, Chicago also. Any city, major mega city that has respect for it and has redeveloped their downtown into something that highlights their history is interesting to visit. And so I'm hoping that this is just a small piece of the puzzle, right? But with the different tools in place that we could maybe someday be someone else's favorite city that talks about that they enjoy visiting, especially like the beautiful theater. Just so many pieces that need to could be connected to move forward.
Thank you, Carol.
I'm Patty Goldberg. I am also a TIRZ board member. My connection to downtown is we own Casa Raul, so we're an active business trying to survive this climate. We also we rent and we own property downtown. My favorite city, I'm going to copy someone from the morning and say Jerusalem for the history and the different cultures.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to introduce our next speaker. He is not only the chairman of the TIRZ board, but he's a community leader that Laredo is lucky to have. He is the Vice President of International and Public Affairs at IBC. He holds 25 years experience and expertise in international trade and economic development. He emphasizes the need for innovation, real-world and workable solutions that apply to long-term planning. He worked and lived in Mexico and Japan and has held senior leadership positions at the City of San Antonio, the State of Texas, and the North American Development Bank. He serves on numerous boards, including the Laredo Chamber of Commerce and the Webb County Heritage Foundation, and is also on the advisory board for the Center of International Business Studies at Texas A&M University. His work has been recognized internationally. He holds an MBA from Texas A&M International University and a BBA from St. Mary's University. It's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Henry Sabiñón.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the kind introduction. You're sticking to the script and reading it as I wrote it. Okay. First of all, a bit of housekeeping. We have drinks, we have water, we have munchies. Please help yourselves, because there really isn't a formal break, so to speak. So you stand up to go get something, no one's going to be hurt or offended. So please take advantage of the opportunity. So let's go ahead and begin with the presentation on the TIRZ. Just a very brief description. If we can go to the next slide. Thank you. So, first of all, what is a TIRZ? TIRZ stands for the Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone. And so it is, by definition, a zone. It has to be created as a zone. And as you can see here, the TIRZ, part of the TIRZ is roughly a rectangle. And this rectangle has a northern boundary called Scott Street. It has an eastern boundary called San Dario. The south is the river. The west is the railroad tracks. And then there's like a bit of gerrymandering that goes on there. And we cross the bridge and encompass Laredo College campus. But that's the zone. It's the first zone created by the city of Laredo in the downtown area, and that's why it's called Zone Number 1. The city is currently working on a couple of other zones. The zone was created for a 30-year period to run from 2017 to 2047, and I'll explain the significance of that to you soon. Its organizational first meeting was in 2017, and our board members are a composition of private sector individuals as well as public sector individuals. As was mentioned, I'm the chair of the board, but Carol Alexander also sits on the board representing the private sector, appointed by the mayor of Laredo. Jose Ceballos is also representing the private sector, also appointed by the mayor. Patricia Goldberg, representing the private sector, appointed by Councilwoman Cigarroa. We have Jose Castillo, Director of Finance, and Orlando Navarro, Director of Planning, who are on the board by charter. In other words, when this organization was created, it was created with those two members having to be on the board. So their expertise has been invaluable to us, and we continue to tap it even to this day, a meeting we had not too long ago. And then there's a last member that hasn't been appointed. The city manager can appoint another city official to the board, and that's a vacant position that we are thinking will be filled soon. There are about 180 TIRZs throughout Texas. So if you're thinking that, is it a new program? It's not a new program. It's being used by other municipalities to help grow projects, and it's helping, obviously, quite a few communities. Most of them were found in urban areas. You'll see San Antonio, Houston, and Dallas with 20 plus TIRZs in their cities. But communities like Laredo sometimes have as many as 10 TIRZs, and depending on the project, the size, and how that's going to work. So how does a TIRZ work? So let me be very clear. It's not an additional tax. Okay? So a TIRZ does not add tax. It's not going to increase your taxes. How a TIRZ works is very unique, and I like the system that was set up. It was given to us as a tool, but it's not a give me. We have to work for it. And this is how we do it. I'm going to ask you to imagine that this zone collects $100,000 a year in property taxes. Obviously, it's much, much, much higher, but for simplicity's sake, $100,000 in property taxes that the city collects and then uses it. What does it use it for? Obviously, police, fire, public works, parks and recreation, and all of the other services that we expect a municipality to deliver. So when the city declares its TIRZ, it freezes taxes at a certain year. In this case, it froze taxes at 2016. So the $100,000 that came in 2016, in 2017, 18, 19, 20, and all the way to 2024, will continue to go to the city of Laredo for the very services that I just finished saying it was supporting. But here's the deal they made with the TIRZ and the downtown residents. If you work to improve the district and the district gets better, therefore property values go up, everything above 100,000 you can keep within the zone for reinvestment purposes, infrastructure purposes, streetscape purposes, various purposes that a TIRZ can work on to help make the place a better place to live. So in year one, if you collect your $100,000 that you normally were collecting, plus an extra $1,000, that extra $1,000 goes into a kitty, into a separate box, if you will, and that separate box is kept for reinvestment in the zone. And that's what we have to plan with. As I said, we'll be continuing this program like this for the next 30 years as we continue to revisit, to reimagine, and rethink about how the downtown should work. And as I said, there is a catch to this. We don't help ourselves, we don't get the money. So if we don't improve the district, $1,000 will come in, and you know how much we can do with $1,000, not much, right? So it behooves us to work on this. So let's go to the next slide. Why was the TIRZ created? So I'm going to ask you to hone in on a particular area here, and this is the outlet mall, the shops, the outlet shops. The first idea when they were discussing the TIRZ, there were other reasons, but I'm going to talk about a fundamental reason, is that there's a significant investment by the city of Laredo in the downtown area. And how does the city protect its investment? It protects its investment by making it a walkable area so that people can walk and go to the shops, enter the shops, go out of the shops, go to the downtown area, or be in the downtown area and visit the shops. But basically to avoid the habit of landing downtown, doing what you need to do downtown and getting back in your car and taking off. So they envisioned the TIRZ as a connection, an opportunity to connect various points downtown to one another to create a walkable area, a connected area, to protect the investment that's being made in downtown. And guess what? The shops are not the only investment that's being made downtown. There's a bit of significant investment in other areas that we're going to talk about in a second that we need to make this a vibrant community where we want to work, where we want to live, where we want to worship, want to come together with our friends, family, and then that visitors find attractive to be in. So if you go to the next slide, here I'm going to describe to you some of the projects we're talking about that are investments and significant investments in the downtown area. I don't think I need to explain them to you. You know them, but I'm going to read them off anyway. We have the Border Heritage Museum, which is a significant renovation of a building. Most recently, the Cathedral renovation, the Plaza Theater coming up, investment that has been made throughout the years in this hotel, the bridges and the federal funds that have gone with bridge renovations, the outlet mall that I already mentioned, Siete Banderas. Remember how we were all so excited when this came into the downtown area thinking, this is going to do it. Not yet, but we're working on it. Laredo Center for the Arts. These are all projects and organizations downtown that if we connect them, when you go to worship on Sunday at the cathedral, don't get back in your car and go back home. Walk to the next destination near the cathedral for brunch or to visit the museum. But in order to do that, we have to build the infrastructure to encourage that. And that's what economic development is about. It's a layering process. We were talking, something was mentioned this morning. You know, some of you are familiar with Malcolm Gladwell and his book, The Tipping Point. And so Matthew Gladwell talks about any particular subject. It's not anything specific, but when something occurs, when a city goes from unsafe to safe, or vice versa, a city can go from unsafe to safe, from safe to unsafe. It isn't one event that causes it. It's a series of small events, small things that climb until you reach a tipping point, and then it goes over to the next point. And I know we've imagined several times, oh my gosh, you know, Siete Banderas, that's the investment. It Street, that's going to do it. Laredo Center for the Arts, that's going to do it. The shops, that's going to do it. You know, and we haven't reached, I mean, let's be honest, we haven't reached the tipping point yet. We continue to invest in the downtown, and we should, and we're working towards that tipping point. And what the TIRZ wants to do is help contribute to the tipping point by connecting the dots for these projects. Let's go to the next slide. Thank you. Okay, so what this chart does is this map just shows you, it demonstrates the level of investment that's going into the downtown area so that we just, we grasp this mentally. It's significant. I mean, we have investments to the tune of 80 million, 65 million, 15 million, 2 million, 8 million. These are significant investments in the downtown area that in and of themselves are great, but they have to connect with one another so that they leverage and they feed off the energy they've created with each other. And that's why we've honed in on this zone as the first phase of development. One, it makes sense. And two, the city council thought about it. When they were directing us to help create a walkable area, they said, TIRZ board, please help us protect that investment in Laredo and connect it to the rest of the downtown and historic area. So let's go to the next slide. No, I'm sorry. Let's stick back to the prior slide. I have a couple of other things to talk about. One of the questions that has come out is that Laredo has the bones. You know, the downtown area has some very strong bones in terms of development and project development and things we can do to help grow the downtown area. And but we need to work to imagine this, and that's part of this. This is part of that process. I want to bring us down to reality, if you will, and the reality is the following. I mentioned $1,000 that we're collecting. Okay, the real figure is between $250,000 and $300,000. Okay? That comes in every year to that second box that's kept for downtown redevelopment. And right now we have something just shy of $1 million, more or less. Is that right? More or less?
Actually, we just reached the $1 million last month.
Okay, so we should be giving out awards or prizes. Ding, 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 ding. But we reached $1 million. But look how long it took. Taxes were frozen, 2016 levels, and it took 17, 18, 19, 20, and now part of 21 to do this. $1 million. What can you do with $1 million? Let me tell you what we can do with $1 million. And I know you all can imagine it because we all have to work with various projects. But I'm going to give you a very, very rough figure just to give you an idea. When we were first talking to the city and we were talking about the cost of working on a block, working one block of streetscape that involved trees, sidewalks, maybe a bit of wires or electrical utilities and things like that, but not much. But just a minor like kind of facelift. It costs $500,000 to do one block. So the good news is we can now do 2 blocks. That's also the difficult news. Of all of the TIRZ downtown, the giant zone it is, we can do 2 blocks. And in another 4 years, we'll be able to do another 2 blocks. So we have to think strategically. And let me tell you, this board has been doing this in spades. We have walked. First of all, we visited TIRZ districts in other areas. Second, we've walked downtown over and over. Not only do we work and live downtown, we walk it thinking about redevelopment. And we've gone up and down the streets before we settled on an area to start working with. And we've done this all also through the function of public meetings. So if this is your first meeting, an introduction to the TIRZ, thank you and welcome for being here. But just to give you an idea, we've already met 40 plus times in the history of the TIRZ to help, and these are public meetings that are held once a month on the second Tuesday of the month to help us imagine these projects and work with them. And the first 2 years we couldn't do anything because there wasn't enough money to do something. Okay? Now, here's what we did. We worked with the city to to leverage this almost $1 million, this $1 million, because at that time it wasn't $1 million. And we said, we need more money. Can you help us use the funds we do have to leverage bond money to bring a little bit more money in so we can do more than just 2 blocks? And the city agreed. And so recently, we used the funds that we have in that little box to leverage $2.5 million in bond money to bring forward a project that will be paying out in the future as money comes in, but we can do the project now at today's prices, and we can do more than just 2 blocks. And that's what we're going to discuss right now. So we'll go to the next slide. You're going to hear me talk about 3 things a lot. You're going to hear 3 words that are very common to this presentation: sidewalks, lights, and trees. And I'm going to start with the last one, trees. The map there, the pretty pink map is really just pretty, but it's not a good pretty. It's a bad pretty because it shows heat zones and the heat of the downtown area. That's downtown Laredo. You notice that there's a little patch of green on the upper left-hand corner. That patch of green is Jarvis Plaza. We don't see the same patch of green around San Agustin Plaza. And perhaps there's just not enough trees, and we need to put in a few more trees. It probably helps not spread this red hot part or this hot pink part further down this way, and the fact that the park's there helps create a lighter version of this. So it has some effect, but I wish it had that effect. And I want to mention that because if we're going to create a walkable area, people have to walk in comfort, and that means not in the blistering sun. And so trees have 2 strong purposes here. I like them because they're pretty. And Able City reminds us it also helps with the heat index. So let's go to the next slide. These are our inspirations. These are other cities and other downtowns, and you're going to see you're going to see the common feel. I mean, we didn't invent these 3 words: sidewalks, lights, and trees. You're going to see them in picture after picture because that's what works with other communities. And I got to emphasize, as the board walked around and thought about ideas and mulled over thoughts and all of this, it wasn't easy. I mean, now I can just say them like this: trees, sidewalks, and lights. You know? And it sounds so easy. But when we first started this project, it was overhead utilities, underground drainage, it was, you name it, you know, we came up with something else. It was a list of 20 descriptors of what made downtowns vibrant. But we also had another constraint, and that constraint was budget. We don't have a bottomless pocket to fund this project. So we had to focus. And we started focusing on the ideas and the projects in the street that would give us the biggest bang for the buck, and what on those streets would give us even a bigger bang for the buck. And the answer: sidewalks, lights, and trees. Next slide. This is Laredo. Some of them are pictures of Laredo now. I mean, when I first saw this picture, I thought it was a picture from somewhere in Spain, and it's not. Or Mexico, it's Laredo, undoctored, that's how it looks. And most people don't realize that you can find that gem of a street in the downtown area. Others, the cathedral, that's an actual picture that's now been taken. Isn't that a beautiful view? Undoctored, that's the way that looks. But we helped with a few other things. We imagined what string lighting might look around across streets. Maybe lighting the trees this way. Imagine these trees right here. You know? So this was our inspiration chart as we worked to develop the various ideas for the project. Next slide. And so now I'm going to talk about 3 corridors in particular. I'm going to talk about Zaragoza from the mall to Santa Úrsula, and I'm going to hone in on this area here and this area here. Then I'm going to talk about San Agustin, joining the plaza to the Laredo Center for the Arts, and I'm going to talk about Iturbide the last. Are these projects going to be simultaneous? Probably not. We're going to take them in chunks. It's not probably a good idea to shut all of downtown all at one time, but I want to show you what we're going to be trying to do in chunks so that you get a feel for it. Next slide. So this is Zaragoza, and this is Zaragoza right now. That's the picture on the right. So if you're standing at the corner of Zaragoza and Convent, and you're looking down this street, there's nothing that says, walk down this street. There's something pretty at the end. There's shopping at the end. There's nothing that says that. Nor if you look the other way, might you be enticed to go the other way either. It's probably a street you would just pass by. And the idea is, we want a pedestrian to say, I need to walk from point A to point B because it's attractive. And so how we reimagine Zaragoza is this way. And we widen the sidewalk. We've made it walkable. And walkable is a key word here. There are too many stumbling blocks or stumblers or barriers to straight walking in the downtown area. And we have to address them. Because if people are going to walk up, they're not going to they can't feel like they're walking through a landmine, so to speak. So we create a walkable, even if it's addressing one side, but we make it walkable. The trees, already the trees tell you, let's go down that street. There's something pretty there. And then the lights at the end that you see at the very end tell you that there has to be something going on there. Thank you. There has to be something going on there. Those lights are not there just for no reason at all. And that's what the outlet is. If you exit the outlets, we're hoping looking this way, you feel the same way. You're seeing trees that are lit, trees first of all, sidewalks, and it's going to take you to San Agustin Plaza so that you can go enjoy the atmosphere of that area. Next slide. Now I'm taking you to the other end of Zaragoza. This is Zaragoza with Santa Úrsula, and this is that corner there. And it's not a very attractive corner, but that other picture is a reimagined picture. And what we've reimagined and we put into this picture are trees that are lit, and what we call a monument or an entrance monument. And these entrance monuments tell cars, people who are in cars, there's something going on this street. You see them in major cities when you go to them. As you're driving down the street, all of a sudden you see an arc with lights, or you see a sign that says, turn this way. It's telling you something is happening there. And this tells the person who's driving down Santa Úrsula, who's not familiar with downtown, they live in the north side, they come down once in a while. What we want this to say is, turn here, because there's going to be something interesting if you turn here. Notice, and again, this is just imagined at this point. It's not set in stone, but we have the monument signage that kind of echoes or mimics the steeple. And, a significant connection. There's a connection there that joins these pictures. And here you see it a little more clearly. But notice how the feel for that street has changed simply by adding trees, lighting, and in this case, I don't even think we touched the sidewalks. We're just adding trees and lighting. Okay, let's go to the next slide. This is San Agustin, and that's a 2-block area. We call it Tangelo Parkway. It's a beautiful parkway. It already has trees, so we save ourselves half the task of the trees. We may add a couple of more trees, but these trees need some attending to. But the biggest obstacle here is, if you don't want to trip, you have no choice but to walk in the middle of the street. If you don't walk in the middle of the street to get from point A to point B, you better have good eyesight because you'll trip. And that's not a good street. So notice the reimagined street. It's a little more even so that it flows. We've added the lighting. We've added a couple of more trees. And so if you're at San Agustin Plaza, you might say, let me go see what's at the end of the canopy of trees. And guess what's at the end of the canopy of trees? The Laredo Center for the Arts, the Plaza Theater. And vice versa. If you're at the Plaza or the Laredo Center for the Arts and you look down that area, I wonder what's down there. And lo and behold, it's the Plaza, it's the cathedral. It becomes a walkable area. But right now, given the prior picture, there's nothing that says or invites you to walk. Next slide. Now we go to Iturbide. And this is Iturbide and Santa Úrsula. And this is another one of those monument signs that tells the driver, this is Iturbide Street. And it says it in clear words, Iturbide Street. It's not how it's going to look. This is just a rendering. We're still working on this. But notice the existing conditions right now. This is the sidewalk, not. This is the sidewalk, barely. And we need to make it walkable. And so the middle picture adds trees, it adds lighting, it does the walkability, the entrance monument, and then we go to the next slide to show it in the larger format. More inviting. All of this is on public right-of-way, public property, but it is to connect investment, significant investment in the cathedral, in Siete Banderas, in the outlets, so that they connect and people feel comfortable walking. Next slide. I'm going down to the other end of Iturbide, or further down Iturbide. Iturbide already has trees. And I said this before in a prior meeting, I'll say it again here. I really do think Iturbide is a very pretty street. And I think it has to do with the trees and the sidewalks. Does it need a facelift? Yes. And that's what we want to do. We want to give it a facelift. But if you go down any other street, I don't think, if this is just my opinion, there's another street that says, hey, walk down this street. Iturbide is the only one that says it, and it says it because of the lights. There are some lights, some of the buildings, because of the trees, and definitely because it feels walkable. The sidewalks are there. So you notice that in this rendering, the trees now have lights. There are more trees, and even the buildings are having lights. And we'll go to the next slide. We've discovered this building in the corner of Iturbide and Flores that originally, those little spires at the top, if you go check them out, were lit. So maybe we talk to the owner and we talk about getting them relit. Imagine how this could add to the ambiance of that corner significantly. And then it feels more walkable. And again, all we've done are trees, sidewalks, and lights. Sure, we could do a lot more if we had a lot more money, but we're working with the budget and we're being realistic, and I think this is how we're showing you that we've thought out a budget and a plan that would work. Next slide. When is this going to begin? Well, the project is still in the design phase, and I will say, first of all, we're in the about a year ago, we let out a contract with a company to help us in the design and planning stage, take us from design and planning to execution, and then working when the contracts are let out with the project people who are working the projects, and that's Able City. Able City, if you're not familiar with it, and I'm sure we are, but I'll still say it, Able City not only has a strong presence here in Laredo, it has a strong presence in the Valley, it has a strong presence in San Antonio. They are in demand because the projects they're working with are good, and I think they're going to lend us some of this magic and expertise they have. We wouldn't be here if it weren't for them helping us get to these, putting our ideas to paper, and also putting a budget to this. The only way we can approach the city and ask for money and know how much this costs is if we costed this out or estimated this out. When will it begin? The first contract probably couldn't begin until the next 4 to 6 months before any ground is broken, and we're going to be doing it in phases. But once it takes off, we hope we're working one after the other and get it finished within a 2-year period is our goal. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that the board here has done a lot of hard work, and we also have, Arturo, I want to recognize the hard work you did on the board when you served with the city, and we're on the board also. You know, we have a lot of interested people who are still keeping in contact with us, want to work with us, and I think that's what's going to be the magic. This is an opportunity to be a tipping point for downtown. Next slide. And how we're going to make downtown look like this in the future and connect the significant investment. Next slide. I think that's it for me. I will point out one thing. This morning, there were a lot of smart questions in the session this morning talking about wayfinding, signage and everything. And let me tell you, Able City has considered these things. Wayfinding, monument signage, connection nodes, etc. So it's something that's all in our mind, and we are taking it into account. I'm going to turn the floor back to Regina. I hope you found this productive, but we need your input now.
Thank you, Henry. So we want to open it up to discussion, really to hear everyone's feedback, any reactions you have, how you think that these public improvements can have an impact on your own investments, on your own work, and just to keep our time productive, because we do have limited time, I ask that you refrain from interrupting one another so that we can hear all the voices in the room. So yes, if you start to think about the work that you currently do, for example, the cathedral and the huge investment that went into it, how do you see these public improvements having an impact in the cathedral, Bishop, for example?
Well, definitely with the consideration of the cathedral was recognizing our historicity. We have such a wonderful, elegant, historical story to tell about our early foundations, and cathedral is one of those. But like our other buildings, with the cathedral over 125 years old, that present structure, they needed repair, they needed help. And so we committed to doing that and to being a beacon, as it was from the beginning, as a heart of the community, a place of gathering. And so I think we've accomplished that. I invite anyone who hasn't seen it in the interior to please go in. But as was shown there, I felt in the exterior, it needs to be shining in our community too. And that's where the lighting came in, the repair of the clock and the bells and different things like that. So I definitely did all of that in mind. We did, the church, to enhance our present situation in the downtown area. Recently, we have been inviting visitors from throughout the United States to come and help us in our humanitarian effort with the immigrants. Many of them are staying here at La Posada. And it is a joy for me to be able to take them in the early evening at these hours, walking on the plaza, to be able to just share with them the history of our Latin culture and what the plaza means, how the church was there, how the city officials and governmental agencies, places like La Posada hotels for visitors, was around this area, and how the people love to gather. All of that is a wonderful enhancement to visitors and to people. They fall in love with our community and they see the richness of our culture. So that is what I've wanted to continue to do, and we will continue to do that. I'd love to be able to continue to partner with La Posada, with other businesses in our area that feel the same way, so that we not only invite visitors from outside to enjoy our community, but even, as was mentioned, North Laredo, South Laredo, anybody who doesn't normally come here, work here, live here in the downtown area, to come and see it. And that's where the enhancement of activities can come in and that sort of thing. If I may just add at this point, where the walking does come in, where I always kind of hesitate, is Tantangelo drive, walkway, which I love, but sometimes I'm scared to walk with the collar because outside there's not a friendly family atmosphere. I've got times where I really have to put my head down because of some of the people that might be standing on the corners or around that area. And I think if we are talking about walking from La Posada to the Plaza Theater, I would just say we need to look at that and consider that for family and for others. I see they're looking like an entertainment center, and I acknowledge all of that. And I know, what is it, 9th Street or 6th Street in Austin, and the location of things. I see there's a place for things, but I just want to say, I hope that there still is a diversity to where families, youth can come. Another area that when I try to encourage people to come to activities at the cathedral, and today we had a meeting with the legal profession planning for the October Red Mass. We've traditionally held it at cathedral, but a lot of times they're saying parking, or do I have to go back downtown and things like that. So, of course, now with the renovated, restored cathedral, I said, you have to come back. We want you to see what is the beauty is here and all of that. And then all said, yes, we're going to do it. But that's another thing that we want to look at. And again, not just bringing problems or negative situations to us, but the cathedral, also the diocese, we pay our bills with the cathedral restoration. We do seriously want to look at parking, and we do have a site by Tatangelo walkway that we want to look at as maybe a garage, parking garage. Maybe we can work with the city or others to collaborate, or other businesses to collaborate with us, but can add to enhancing and to responding to that excuse that says there's no parking. I don't want to go down because I can't park there. So we hope we'll be a part of the solution for that.
Yes, no, that is a really important point with parking, and as well with safety, and definitely something that many of people in this room are also working towards. But I think it also becomes a vicious cycle if we don't have lighting, if we don't have that inviting atmosphere. What happens in the areas that are not inviting. So thank you, Bishop. Anyone else have any reactions?
I want to comment as a citizen, now I'm separated from the city and retired and everything. I really like the bishop's approach to the parking concerns. All the improvements, a lot of them are going to wind up eliminating a lot of parking, on-street parking. And I think we need to find that middle place to where we can have people congregate and not have to walk 3-4 blocks through some dark alleys and dark streets, which primarily for the entertainment sector. But me personally, I do want to just mention that on Iturbide Street on the 800 block, the renditions that I've seen before, there is a lot of walkability issues. And I think we need to consider not eliminating all the parking on both sides of the street, because in particular on the south side there's 5 driveways, and so I just want that to be taken into account in any future design that happens. And I want to applaud the bishop for his leadership in terms of trying to partner with the city or an entity for the parking, because it's a vital concern for sustaining these efforts. So thank you, Bishop, for looking at that portion of our concerns. I appreciate it, sir.
Thank you. Anyone else have any thoughts?
So I would just like to commend this board and Able City for really taking into account safety, because although we heard lighting sounds beautiful, but it really serves a purpose. All of these things are really to serve a purpose, such as sidewalks. So that's also safety for people that are walking, or people that have wheelchairs and aren't able to use sidewalks the way they are now in the downtown. So making it more accessible for other people to even visit the downtown area. those are all really important. I mean, even when we talk down to the trees, you know, sometimes we think, oh, it's a tree, but it really serves. There's a design purpose behind it. It really serves. We know we live in a hot community. We know that to be a fact. There's nothing that we can change about that, but we can change design aspects of our community so that it can better fit our needs. And this presentation really did show that they took into account all of those things. So me as a Main Street director, that's one of the biggest things that I hear all the time is security. And so seeing lighting and you can use it in a beautiful way so that it can also be an artistic thing, really combines that and can have a really huge effect on how people interact with its environment. So I guess that's just the only comment that I would make. It's nice to see that that's being taken into consideration in planning.
Anyone else have any thoughts?
Well, just, I think when Henry was doing his presentation and he was showing us what's present, what could be, and he mentioned lights and how you get attracted to them. It's like a bug, you look towards it. It's true, you know, and you see that simply in a picture. And so, you know, it kind of was exciting to see that, and that's to come, you know, and so it just really hits home when you can kind of see it. You know, same thing with the church. You know, the church is a beacon, and I don't know how many times I've seen people come to La Posada and say, hold on, and then they'll run across the street to take a picture of the church. You know, it's just a beacon. People want to go to it. And so that's just a small example of the same kind of idea that's being promoted by the architecture group. And they're pretty neat, so I'm excited. You know, I'm excited to see that. So keep going.
Mr. Castillo, as a board member, your experience maybe with the TIRZ board, anything you would share with the stakeholders and landowners?
Well, I was designed as part of the charter that board, or the organization of the TIRZ board. The finance director is part of that. So I'm here representing the finance department of the city of Laredo. I guess one of the good things that happened recently is the issue of the bonds. I mean, we were able to issue $2.5 million worth of bonds, and those are coming in to do some of these projects.
May I ask, since I'm learning about this, and this is a great introduction, and these meetings that you're having, as you bring forth those visions and those potential projects, is it the board that makes the decision on, yes, we're going to do this next, or we're going to do this is what we decided on? Or does it have to be presented to city council and they approve it, or how does that all work?
So that's a very good question. So this first part of this first phase was a lot of board input, but not without extending our reach to partners in the community who added comments to some of what was going on. But this is what we call phase one. Let us say it's a 30-year TIRZ, and it can leverage up to, if I recall correctly, because it's $30 million, right? Potentially. And so, can you imagine what could be done with that? But the first parts have to start. So there's going to be a phase two, and there's going to be a phase three. And it was very interesting to add. We purposely have ideas, but have not set anything in stone, because we need people to see this and say, that's great, I like it. And we've got that kind of a comment. But I'd also like to see X, or I'm also thinking that you need to pay attention to Y. And that's what the purpose of the public meetings of the TIRZs are, is to collect those ideas so that you, as a downtown resident, inform the next phase, the second and the third phase as it develops. Because we don't just think about it and then do it. We did have to go to city council to present this, and so the city council gave it its blessing. And you want that, of course, especially since we depend so much on cities' departments to assist us in moving projects forward. But community input, nothing I think would please the city council more than to hear that phase 2 and phase 3 came with not only board input, and by the way, all of us could be called at any time. When I say we had input, there were people I was talking to in my circle who would say, hey, how about this, how about that? But now you know how to reach us, and we do want to hear about what you think can be done in addition to this, because it's 2.5 out of a potentially $30+ million project if we work it correctly.
Thank you.
I think maybe that the TIRZ does have, the TIRZ, they presented to council,
Right.
but the TIRZ board made the decisions. They voted, and I mean, of course, with tons of community, 4 years of community input, and 40+ meetings that you can watch on YouTube if you can't sleep. And so, but ultimately, it's the board made up of city, a city employees component, right, and the private sector. But the TIRZ board votes and makes the decision, right, and then they present.
Send city council for the right. Thank you.
Anyone else? Tina, I'm gonna call on you. You're the liaison of the TIRZ, right?
No comments for now.
No comments. I know you've been involved in some of the developments that have happened in the downtown. Could you share maybe some of your experiences, and even with doing the sidewalks and some of the renovations there?
Well, we do have some sidewalk projects that we've done. We get federal funding, but it has to be on the residential side. So we stuck to, I guess you would say, the west side of Santa Maria. Yeah, we stuck to the west side of Santa Maria, and we did some improvement just recently. I believe it was on Iturbide and, if I'm not mistaken, Lincoln and Iturbide Pub. So we did invest some. Our community development block grant comes with a component of assisting low-income residents. On that note, we did identify some buildings that are owned by the city, and just recently we completed the rehabilitation of a 2-story building that was possibly being considered to be demoed for parking, for 1-story parking, 1-floor parking. So we decided to salvage that building, and we created 15 low-income or affordable housing options for elderly.
That's 820 Common?
820 Common. So that one's completed, and it's, I believe, 100% rented. I mean, we leased it up within 2 months, and that was just, getting people to come in and fill out the documentations. We are currently looking at the Southern Hotel, which is around the corner on Matamoros. We are looking into applying for a grant, because that's going to be a bigger task. It's a 3-story building. So we're hoping to create 22 affordable housing units, not just for elderly this time, just mixed.
So this morning, I'm going to put you on the spot, but this morning one of the downtown owners said, are we leveraging federal money, all the federal money that we could possibly be leveraging to help these projects? Because we know that as a result of COVID and the federal government sending money to various cities, is there an opportunity there? There's a lot of money going to cities that are earmarked for urban development, downtown development. And so I assured them that as board members, having city people on the board, we're leveraging some of that. But yeah, I just want to reemphasize that came up as a subject in the morning, in the fact that it's good that the TIRZ is doing this with the tax money and leveraging to get bond money, but that's still, it's the taxpayer, the tax contributor to the downtown area who's paying for the bond over the long term. And so, but we should not let federal opportunities slide by. I know you're not, but I bring it up and I say I'm putting you on the spot because a lot of heads were nodding, where they were saying, yes, we cannot miss any opportunities that are coming that are open to the downtown. So let us know how we can also help to be part of whatever package you put together to leverage funding that might help with the downtown area.
And you know, and to that point, a lot of the funding that is going to the downtown, and especially for these housing projects, is all federal. There is no other. There hasn't been much interest from, you know, the general. We were hoping that with these success stories, people can come and see that it can be done and it can be successful, and hopefully brings in more housing. But I mean, I truly believe we have been, you know, using a lot of our funding in the downtown on the housing side, and we are going to be leveraging our community development block grant for a HUD loan to actually make the Southern Hotel happen, and we're going to be basically requesting a loan from the federal government and leveraging our own CDBG funds. If it's, you know, hopefully the operations, you know, ends up paying its own loan, but if not, it's our grant that has to be leveraged. Is there more opportunity? Possibly, but I mean,
Thank you.
So I also told you a little while ago that I'm reaching out to the realtors in the community. I've already spoken to some groups, and what we're trying to do is bring them downtown to see the opportunities. Hopefully in the near future I can get some owners of buildings that are maybe vacant or something to open them up to like an open house, so we could present these places for potential investments, or maybe there's somebody who would like to be downtown or something, but just to get more eyes looking at it and see if we can't get some excitement from realtors to start considering the downtown area, or if they go somewhere and they visit with somebody who wants to do some work like that, they'll have it in the back of their mind. They can say, "Oh, I know a place."
I really liked that idea. I think it's fantastic. You know how you do parade of homes, but we're going to do a parade of empty buildings, and dilapidated buildings. But imagine if we did a parade of buildings and we showed them to potential investors, realtors, and said, walk through them with a critical eye. What would you need to make this building work for you so that you would invest in this building and bring it up to speed? And they might say, I'm using this as an example, but you know, the infrastructure in terms of utilities isn't there, and I can't touch this until water is brought in and light and electrical is brought in. Well, maybe that's something we work with the city on doing. But let's have them tell us what they need to make these projects up to speed so they become commercially viable projects. Remember, every project is easily a government viable project, because you can put federal funding from some project into something. Commercially viable projects are more difficult, but it's the commercially viable project that's going to bring in the tax money for the TIRZ to bring in money for the coffers, not the public project, so to speak. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we don't want all of them to be federal projects or city projects, because then we're not going to make any revenue on city projects. You're not going to increase your
tax base. Exactly.
So I wanted to chime in. So I think we have most of the TIRZ board here still. So I think that's the next step for the board, is to kind of envision, to create that vision, and feeds right into what Orlando's suggesting, which I really would support. I think that's a great idea, getting more eyes on the issues. But I also think we ought to construct some sort of vision and leaning on our consultant-enabled city to drive that in creating micro areas that where you can present to a realtor, here's what this street could look like. I mean, it's the old retail, wholesale, whatever. It's not going to ever go back to that. I think we all agree. But maybe become something different, and you construct that vision. I think that's kind of the role that the TIRZ should be in leading that construction of a vision. And then the realtors are going to be very real, and maybe they walk away, maybe some stick around, but I think that's a really good exercise to do.
I agree. Different idea than what we've tried before.
Housing is the missing link. We all agree on that, and we see what that's been doing in other cities. You don't have to go so far. Valley's been doing it, San Antonio's been doing it, look at say places like Southtown. We have St. Peter's, and there's a lot of really great things happening there already. But to bring housing into the central business district will really change a lot of things. It will make it, it will just add so much value, and it will be part of the economic development strategy. The institutions are already here. I think just having everybody coming to the table like today, continue to do this, is really important. And then adding that last layer of fabric to our downtown, which is a great downtown.
So, along these thoughts about bringing real estate brokers in and being able to show them what's possible, really, when they go to people and say, this is what you can do here, and there are developers who are interested in developing in downtowns. Maybe not a lot of them are here in Laredo, but there are from other places, and they see the value. What they're looking for is to see the bottom line, and how they can minimize their risk, because if they're coming in and they're saying, okay, we're going to be part of this thing that's happening, this rebirth of this downtown, they need to know that their investment is going to meet the return on investment that they need to have to make it possible. So that's why you have to really look at incentive packages to see how you're going to do that. The NEC was part of that. The TIRZ can be part of that as well in other ways down the line. If there's a program, the city is part of that. It's a matter of creating a program that will mitigate the risk for a lot of these developers, at least a portion of it, so that they can make that investment as possible. So, I mean, San Antonio has done that over the last 25 years.
30,
yeah.
30, 40 years, yeah.
And they started their transformation by, El Paso, every city has. And we need to have those same. Sometimes it's just, I can tell you a little secret about It Street. It has those incentives. They're based on tax, sales tax. I checked on it 2 years ago. Not one has been used, but just the idea that this is possible on the street attracted people to this. I mean, it was just an idea whose time has come. Not whose, but that time has come for that idea to happen, the tipping point. But it was almost just that was necessary to start getting people to come in. And it took, I don't know, did anybody ever do the It Street incentives?
Yes, and yes and no. And it all falls down to a subject that I recently saw during the budget process the city was doing this past year. It's lack of personnel and a coordinator, a full-time coordinator to coordinate all the NECs, all the sales tax exemption programs, all the interrelated programs. If you don't have the personnel, I always say, it's gente no se hace nada. And when you say, well, you got staff already on board, but they're already multitasked with already 10 different things, they're only giving 5% of their time for programs. So it's not going to be successful. So if you want to continue the non-successful efforts, don't hire staff. And if you want to succeed, you need to hire staff. So without people, and I mean, now I'm on this side, so I can talk. So council needs to provide support, and it's time. It's time. You can't do stuff without people. And trying to stretch a penny for a dollar isn't helping anybody. In the same boat. We've been in the same boat for 20 years. I started in 2001 as the coordinator for downtown for the city. And really, there's been a lot of investment, but every year it's going to be that tipping point. Whenever it's that tipping point, and you're reaching that connect the dot point. So we're almost there, I think, but we need to continue that hard-pledged effort that the city needs to continue supporting the staff. And full dedicated staff to downtown, whether it's either a downtown economic development coordinator again, or the personnel to support the programs that it's implementing. Because you can't stretch, one person doing 10 things and expect them to be successful.
I want to add something to that, and I completely agree with your statement. But I also think, so we got to a discussion about what the city could do. And we have great participation from the city on this board, no question. Prior membership, current membership, or not membership, board membership, they're great. But I also think we often don't, when we're talking about downtown, we don't think about rooftops. We need, and Frank mentioned housing, but we need to look at reinvestment in downtown as economic development. It is what that is. We currently aren't looking at downtown, and including some in the city, are not looking at it from that standpoint. That needs to change. We need to align with economic development, and economic development needs to align with the efforts here. If we don't bring rooftops, the guy that was sitting next to me during the morning session said, I want customers. Customers are the sustainability to commercial life in downtown. Until you become a destination, guess what? We probably won't be a destination in my lifetime if things don't change in Laredo. So we need to think about redevelopment in downtown with rooftops. I mean, the bar scene is proving it. That can sustain the nightlife, but you still can't sustain a coffee shop. So we need to think economic development. We need to see it as that, because I think that's what that is. And that's the idea of creating redevelopment micro zones or micro areas, is to actually boost that. I've been saying this with what happens outside the loop. That's easy. Industrial development there, that's easy. This is hard. This is difficult to reinvent something and truly bring rooftops. I mean, people think HEB is going to be down here. We've got no consumption power. We've got so many low-income families in downtown. They don't consume. We've talked about this at another meeting, 260 units within the block. What do they consume a month? $75, $150. I mean, maybe the pharmacy does well, but I think the prism by which we're looking at downtown citywide needs to include economic development. Because if it doesn't, we're missing that aspect of it. I think that's very important. And it is a housing piece, and it wasn't clarified in the morning session. Tina's working that department's working to bring low-income housing. We need more elderly housing, no doubt. But we need to have some mixed development. And maybe over the next year we can find the right developer to come entertain a project like that. But bottom line, I mean, even if we pretty things up, we need that base, we need people living down here.
So I'm going to just hammer that point home with San Antonio. I lived in San Antonio when, you remember, San Antonio was the river walk. The downtown was on the river. Everybody said, don't go up, just walk the river. Because if you walked up, it was scary. This was the 1980s, early 90s. Housing existed, but it was subsidized housing surrounding the downtown area. Okay? You needed that because a lot of the hotels and the restaurants were supported by the people who lived in housing that was not top priced, and you need that mix. But when they started bringing in housing, and you had the Majestic building and the Brady building and the Casino building, all built, and none of it was subsidized housing, so they could rent at whatever they wanted to rent. People started living downtown. The downtown went from the river up to the street level. Suddenly Walgreens redid its entire Walgreens store downtown. Suddenly HEB is thinking, maybe I need to be downtown, and HEB opens downtown. But you had to build housing downtown so that it was not just a destination for tourists, but that the citizens lived there as well. Is it a certain demographic? Sure. I loved it. I lived down there in my 30s and 40s. By mid-40s, I was ready to leave downtown. But I was a powerful contributor to the downtown economy while I lived down there.
But now people in their 60s and 70s want
The
to
aging
dump the
crowd.
stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
They want to dump the car and go back downtown.
So they can walk from Walgreens to their house to this.
50.
So that his point, Jose's point is right on target. We need to consider that and bring that into the picture as well.
So I do want to mention that the city's Economic Development Advisory Committee, I know they're working on some great inner city housing incentives on a package to really look at all the different ways that we can make an investor's ROI worth it. So I think that that's where the city can catalyze that initial investment, and then maybe at some point we can take it back and we don't need that investment anymore. But I mean, from hearing all of you guys today, I think that we need that catalyst because it's not just going to happen on its own. Because, like you said, Mr. Ceballos, it's much easier to develop out on the loop than here. Here, it's much harder. We have
You're going to be
historic
known as the
buildings.
tap guy. I want a water tap, a sewer tap, a fire line tap. Boy, they have that and go to the loop. They got brand new pipes.
Yeah.
Building department?
Yeah, no historic building, so it's a lot easier over there. So how can we make it easier over here in the heart of our city? Anyone else have any thoughts? Any questions from the TIRZ board to the members today?
Thank you.
If I may just add to that pre-pandemic and pandemic has been a difficulty, not only in the health issues, but in the economy, of course. And in your planning and your visioning, it's so hard to see how we can work with the circumstances we're facing. And it may delay some of this dreaming and visioning until we control the pandemic a little bit more. But pre-pandemic, I remember I would walk down our city streets here. And I was very glad to see because of that pink zone that you showed, the little sprinkler systems that was going on. I don't know if that's still happening
That's a great story.
anymore, but that definitely was an incentive to keep walking downtown because it's so hot. But I remember past Convent, a lot of closed shops and stores, and I thought, wow, when will this ever come back? So I'm glad to hear those kinds of things. I'm sorry I haven't come to our farmers market, but I like the idea of a farmer's market. I saw Corpus Christi's picture here with the tents out in the street and all. And if we can continue to expand that and build that with artisans and other things that are typical of our culture or of our capabilities and talents, hopefully we can bring more people and highlight those events. I also, just to think with you out on with visioning, some of the themes or other things like the culture and how do we highlight that in what we're doing downtown and bringing that about. Faith-wise, as part of our Latin culture here, the Catholic faith at least, we're thinking of outdoor processions in the downtown area from the cathedral, things that will bring people back on significant feasts that they already want to come to church for. And hopefully, like you said, after those events, then you can go and shop, then you can go and eat, or other things like that. So those values. And when I heard about housing for senior citizens, of course, the Hispanic heart melts when you see grandma, abuelos, the elderly. And so in talking to our senior citizens, and Catholic Charities has had a senior center, they miss the grandchildren. Their sons and daughters are in other cities, and their grandchildren are there. They don't come back to Laredo as much. But if we can promote children dancing clubs or other things that can entertain our seniors and bring mom and dad with them, because they come with their children to that, and bridge that value of respect for the elderly and the richness that gives us, plus giving life again to the elderly by seeing children and that sort of thing. That might be another cultural value theme that we can try to enhance in different parts of the downtown area that will bring families back or other things like that. and they'll see all the other improvements and maybe want to come at other times. I commend everyone for all the good work you have been doing. Thank you.
Priscilla, could you tell us a little bit about what's going on with the farmers market today? Given COVID, I know you guys are still up.
Well, when the pandemic hit, we unfortunately had to stop, having our farmers market at the plaza. However, there was still a need within our district to provide healthy food to the senior citizens in the area and other people in our community that were looking for healthy food options. And there was also a need from our farmers that were actually, this became more than just, a little business. They were getting a lot of benefit from visiting or participating within our farmers market. So they were calling us like, what can we do? How can we, what can we do? We need to get this back and going. Unfortunately, we don't want to put anyone's health at risk or anything like that, having, people come to the farmers market. So we went ahead and we went online. And so our vendors were still able to sell their product, and people of the community were still able to purchase from our online store. We provided a curbside service right in front of the cathedral, the beautiful cathedral. You would pick up your bag of items there, and then along the way, once we saw how sales were going and how that was working with our community, we created some boxes. So what we did was we reached out to, for instance, our first box, I believe, was in November. It was for the veterans. So we told our community, we have a $25 box that you can purchase. It has a variety of farmers market vendor goodies in there. So it had produce, soaps, just different products that we could get in there. Purchase that for $25, and a portion of that would go to, purchase a box, and we would give the box to the veteran. So we partnered over at American Legion. We delivered, I think it was over 50 boxes to the veterans there. And what that was, not only did we help our veterans, in a time of health and crisis that we were in, our community was involved with supporting our vendors, supporting our community gardens. And so it's through those innovative ideas that have come from our board. We have a broad-based board that all have different backgrounds and different things. Is really what's kind of elevated our farmers market. Now we're back at the farmers market. We had our first one in May, and so that's exciting. We still have our curbside service for those of you that still don't feel comfortable maybe gathering with large groups. So you can still purchase online and pick up at our farmers market every third Saturday of the month. And anybody that's willing to participate and has good ideas, we're always willing to listen and trying to find creative ways to help our community economically, health-wise, in all different aspects. So that's kind of where our market is.
Thank you. Anyone else have any reactions? Any other questions or feedback based on what you saw today? I do want to just ask one question to Arturo. Arturo, you're a resident of the downtown. Can you share a little bit about your experience, why you enjoy living in the downtown, why you chose to live here?
I'll go back to the 2001 when the city made me downtown development coordinator. I actually bought that first house on Iturbide because I wanted to be vested and I wanted to live in downtown and know what the issues were back then. So there was a vesting portion of it, but the elements that have been discussed here and everything have made it very difficult for anybody to be wanting to live downtown. When you have break-ins by homeless, and when you have, for example, parking issues, you have lighting and security issues, you have different elements throughout the entire downtown, not just in one area. You have limited sources or limited supply of police officers at night for this particular area. So security, everything is a wrong element. But when you do focus on all the negatives and then trying to bring up and look at the positive, how can we fix them? And I think large strides have been done towards it, but I mean the efforts that continue right now are important to maintain that positive move forward to kind of bring downtown back. I really think, as an example, I've been looking at trying to do the second property I have as an Airbnb to rent it out and then have a little home office and the other property in front. But right now it's not viable. The parking issue. I'm constantly fighting with customs agents that don't want to, park in their own parking lot because it's too much of a walk because they're on the other side of the bridge, and they're taking up all the parking on Iturbide, as an example. So, I mean, that's just one other element. Also the security. I really don't feel safe at night to be able to sleep in that house downtown. To be honest with you, I mean that's another big one. I know that the tenant that rents from me, he's got a dog, and the dog is let loose at night so that way he can warn him that somebody's trying to get into the property, and that's happened already several times. Whether it's just a vagrant or if it's somebody just trying to do harm. No, that continues to be an issue. It's not talked about. How can somebody want to live downtown if they don't feel safe? So, and it all ties in together: parking, lighting, security, all that stuff, convenience, walkability. So, all this stuff has to kind of move together. So, I hope to live downtown one day, not now.
Thank you for saying that. All right, anyone else before we wrap up?
So, yes, yes, I don't want to end just on that note. Because however true that is, I just want you to know that every city that you go to, that you say, boy, I love this downtown, isn't it incredible, blah, 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 those things that you really love about those places have the same problems. And what they recognize that we, I think, as a city, both private sector and public sector, the private sector that owns properties in the downtown area, what those other cities recognize is, from the public sector side, is how valuable the inner city and downtown is because of the density, and how that means dollars for the general fund for these cities because it takes less to service. You have more connections for utilities on one block rather than in the suburbs. And they recognized that a long time ago, and they started they threw the kitchen sink at economic development. Not my words. The woman who did it for Fort Worth, she said to a group from the planning department, this was 10 years ago, you have to throw the kitchen sink because, I wasn't a believer, she told the people in the room. But I became a believer when I realized and I saw the benefit of these economic development programs and how much people really wanted to live downtown. I don't know if you all saw Fort Worth before, or San Antonio before, I'm sure you all can remember. These things happen by planning, it's a concerted effort, it's a system of thought and practice that goes into place way before you see the improvement. So that's why I'm very happy. I mean, you weren't here the morning meeting, but I think there was a kind of a little bit of a paradigm shift in thinking, and I really think they understand we're in this together. The city has to understand, and I say that big public sector needs to understand that while money is great and they can give us money, but what they need also to understand is how much this is a benefit for them, for the city coffers to do this. And to do it because they have an interest in doing it. This is not a thing of, please help us. This is a thing of real, money that can come into the city because you're building density and fixing the problems that he's talking about. But every city, everyone had problems because in the 1960s and early 70s, they all became blighted, as you know. And all those same ones that you all visit. Las Vegas, downtown Las Vegas. Have you been to downtown Las Vegas lately? Wow.
You have to be strong to
it takes that effort.
So,
Anything else?
I'd like to end on a couple of phrases that I recently heard. I want to hear a lot more of. When did this happen? And I don't feel like I'm in Laredo. Maybe a negative, but really it means like we feel like we're somewhere else. And so if we can kind of get that going, we'll get there.
On that, I saw pictures on social media this past weekend of a friend's daughter's wedding. Who the pictures were all downtown. The wedding was at the cathedral, and everyone was elated. It looked like a destination wedding, but it was downtown Laredo. Because the backgrounds in the pictures were all nicely finished properties. It wasn't blighted. Well, some of them, if they were blighted, they were that way on purpose by design. But it was encouraging to know that this family that could have gone anywhere did their wedding downtown.
Thank you everyone for coming. I want to remind you that TIRZ is just one public tool, but like Viviana said, we need the kitchen sink not only from economic development directly, but also from wonderful organizations like the ones today from the diocese, Laredo Main Street. We need the public sector, the private sector like IBC, retail, the amazing housing authority that we have. We need everyone, and we need everyone to remain engaged. So on that note, I want to let you know the next TIRZ meetings, when they'll take place. You can always attend them. They're public meetings. They take place at the Community Development Conference Room. So the next TIRZ meeting is Tuesday, September 14th at 2:30 p.m. And if after business hours works for you better, the one following that is Tuesday, October 12th at 5:30 p.m. So please, we invite you to join the TIRZ board and continue the journey into phases 2 and 3 in the future. So thanks so much for coming.
Thank you, Jude.
Thank you.